Hi, grade nines. I hope you're having a good day. In this video, I'm going to demonstrate 5 examples from your week 1 homework. This is section 8.1, solving equations. Okay, so let's begin. Okay, the first example I have for you is from page 301, number 6D. Okay, I picked this one because obviously it has mixed numbers, and I know for some of you maybe that would prove to be a little bit of an issue. So here's the first thing I would do, okay? I would convert, I'm just going to adjust my pen here for a minute. I would convert the mixed numbers to improper fractions, okay? So I would convert. Okay, so let's consider -1 and 1/2. Okay, so to convert this, you're supposed to multiply, and then you're supposed to add the top. So 2 times -1 is -2 plus 1. So it's really, this is 3/2, okay? -3/2. I just wanted you to remember that the whole fraction is negative, okay? And then we have, what else do we have here? So let's do the second fraction. And this is one of my first videos, guys, so you have to bear with me in terms of it's going to be kind of rough. All right, so the next fraction is -2 1/4. 4 times 2 is 8 plus 1 is 9, so this is -9/4. So there's my negative. Okay, so now, in other words, we're going to rewrite the question. Okay, we got to rewrite the question. And so that's going to look like this. We've got -3/2 x is equal to -9/4. Okay, so one thing I want to point out is where does this x belong? Well, if the x is sort of in the middle of the fraction, I've told you this before, if it's hanging out in the middle of the fraction, it really actually belongs up in the numerator position. So it's better to think of this as, or this fraction written as this, okay? Okay, so if you're debating where the x goes in the numerator. All right, if they want the x in the denominator, they should write the x in the, it wouldn't be written like this. It'd be written down here right next to this 2, okay? So now we got to talk strategy, okay? I'm still getting used to writing with this pen. I'm doing okay. All right, so strategy. Well, what happens when you have fractions on both sides? What happens when you have fractions on both sides? What strategy do you know from even grade 8 that might lend itself? If you were thinking cross-multiplying, you would be right, okay? One way to just deal with fractions, especially when there's a simple setup, there's only one chunk on the left side, one on the right. In other words, it's not a 2-step equation in the sense there's not adding or subtracting. You can just cross-multiply. So we will cross-multiply. And what does that look like? Okay, cross-multiply. So basically you have -3x times 4, and that's equal to -9 times 2. And -3x times 4 is -12x. And -9 times 2 is -18. Okay? So now we've got something familiar, right? We've gone from this, this sort of kind of messy looking thing because it's a mixed number. We converted it to improper, and now we've got something that's really workable. Now, if -12 times x, what's the reciprocal, what's the inverse operation of multiplication? It's division. So to get rid of this -12, we're going to divide both sides by -12. And of course, that does not cancel to 0. -12 over -12 is equal to a +1, which is what we want. We want the x to have a coefficient, which we leave invisible, as a +1. And -18, well, we know a negative divided by a negative is a positive. We can simplify this fraction for sure. We can just take a greatest common factor out, so we can divide this by 6. and we can divide this by 6, and we get 3 over 2, or x is equal to 1.5. Whoops. Let's make that a little bit nicer, Mr. Smith. 1.5. Okay? All right. Let's just press pause. Okay, next question. Okay, let's do number 8. Number 8, this is decimals. Okay, it's basically the same thing as before. You could treat this as a cross-multiplying situation, right? You could. So the other way you could do it is, well, what's the operation that is going with the e here? What's the relationship of e to negative 2.2? The answer is division. So you're always using inverse operations to work backwards to get the variable by itself. So there's sort of 2 ways to do it. So let's just call this the first way. Okay, let me show you what I'm talking about. Okay. Okay, so you have e over negative 2.2, and that's equal to negative 0.75. Okay, so this relationship is division. So what we can do instead now is we can, let's use blue here. We can choose to multiply both sides by negative 2.2. Okay, so we'll multiply by negative 2.2 here. Oh, I'm going to be racking my brain because I don't have a calculator out. That's going to be good. Okay, so this essentially reduces to 1 or cancels to 1. It's not a zero pair like adding and subtracting. When you multiply and divide, you're looking for a reduction to 1, okay? You could say they cancel though, but just understand that's not 0. Okay, you actually have 1 positive e left over, okay? So we have a negative times a negative. We know the answer is going to be positive, and then we have 70.75, whoops, 0.75, or 75 hundredths times 2.2. Now you notice I'm not putting the signs in because I've already decided my answer is positive. So 5 times 2 is 10, carry the 1. 2 times 7 is 14, plus 1 is 15. We need a placeholder 0. 2 times 5 is 10. We're just going to use that one again. 2 times 7 is 14, plus the 1 that was carried is 15. Okay, just remember this was the decimal that went with the 75. Add them up, 0, 5, 6, 1. And we have, let's just check this off. Let me use, maybe this, no, let's use orange. Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3, okay? We're looking at decimal places to the right of the decimal, to the right of the decimal. So we have 1, 2, 3. So down here, 1, 2, 3. So the answer is E is equal to 1.65. Oh, look at it. I wrote it the European way with the comma. Did you know the Europeans, they use a comma instead of a decimal? I bet some of you knew that. I bet a lot of you knew that. 1.65. Okay? 1.65. Now, the second method, let's just use red. Okay. The second way would be to cross multiply. Okay, I'm not going to write it all out. All right, so you have E is equal to negative 2.2 is equal to 0, negative 0.75 or 75 hundredths. Now, notice the way I wrote this. 75 hundredths or negative 75 hundredths is the same as negative 75 hundredths over 1. So that's, remember, any number could be written, even if the number is decimal, any number can be written over 1. That's the number in fraction form. Okay, so if I'm going to cross multiply, okay, so I'm going to bounce this number 1 off the E. I'm going to bounce that negative 2.2 times negative 0.75. I know I'm saying that wrong. I know other math teachers would slay me for saying 0.75. It's 75 hundredths. E times 1 is E. And we already know the result of this. I'm pretty confident I did this right? So E is equal to 1.65. The answers should match. Okay? So cross multiplying or just using your regular algebra tools of using the inverse operations, either way will work. It's not a problem. Okay? And I'm just going to pause this